West Denver. Sleep deprived and heavily caffeinated.
All right, let's do this then.
This is the Jeff and Bill Show.
I don't agree with that.
They don't always agree, but hey, at least they have coffee.
Coffee.
And each other.
I love you, man.
God help us.
I want to bless him. We need all the help we can get.
Now here's Jeff Hunt and Bill Thorpe. The Jeff and Bill Show on News Talk 710 KNUS.
$7 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Thursday, July 17th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show. News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Yesterday, Bill and I were debating educators and education and the recent NEA battle that's taking place between them and Trump and all that stuff. And they held this big conference, and did they make it about addressing failing schools? No. Did they make it about addressing kids not meeting standards? No. They just made it anti-Trump.
And even though you and I had some disagreements on that, it was shocking to both of us that education didn't seem to be item number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. There was nothing addressing student achievement that seemed to be at the top of the list. It was all the political stuff, and that disappointed both of us. It was ridiculous.
Well, one of the issues we brought up was teachers getting assaulted.
Yeah.
And you talked about and raised the question, all right, if they don't care about the students, why would they face being assaulted by these students and come back? And one of the callers called in, I think it was Spencer, and just said, oh, it's a paycheck. They need to do that. Well, lo and behold, we came up with, or I was reading through the Denver Gazette's opinion pieces, which I love, by the way, and Laura Carno, good friend. She's the executive director of Faster Colorado, which is all about training teachers to respond to a school shooting. We often think about violence in schools and put it in that category, school shootings, that type of thing. Well, when you actually look at assaults taking place from rural classrooms to urban schools, teachers, counselors, paraprofessionals. I mean, you've got broken ribs, unanswered calls for help, a system that's looking the other way. And when they polled some of the teachers, I mean, they got some stunning results. Over 1,100 educators responded from across the state.
Wait, don't tell the percentage yet. Let's ask the listeners and see
if they can guess.
Give me the total number of educators, and then we'll ask the listeners. And when Laura Carno comes up, we'll have her discuss the percentage. So how many educators did they talk to?
They talked to over 1,000. 1,100 educators responding from across the state, from urban, rural, and suburban schools.
Yeah, so across different demographics.
And here were the questions they asked. Have you had a student attempt to cause physical injury to you or another adult in your presence? And then, have you been physically injured by a student?
Yeah.
So have you seen like an effort, an attempt to assault, and then have you been physically?
Yeah. And what we want to know from the listeners is, just in your mind for the next couple of minutes, think about what percentage of the respondents, of those teachers, over 1,000, would respond back and say, yes, I have seen a student try to assault another adult, or I have been assaulted by one of the students. What percentage do you think that is? This is going to be interesting.
We'd love to hear from you. Text message line 720-819-5115. We're going to talk to Laura Carno here. I posted this on X just a minute ago. If a student hits a teacher, it should be legal for the teacher to hit the student back. I think it would solve a lot of problems. And people are already engaging a lot with it.
Oh, I bet.
So some people saying, hey, this is a great fiscally responsible way to get honorably discharged vets and first responders to be teachers. They might actually do some good, especially in some of those more rowdy schools. Yeah, kid hits you, you get to hit back. Somebody else texted in, they should be required to hit back. Others say, no, that's a good way for teachers to get jumped by other students and we'll end up with big fist fights in the classrooms. I can't imagine. Yeah. I can't imagine hitting a teacher.
Now, I want to jump to the phones.
That seems wild to me. The idea that you would ever ever hit a teacher.
Yeah, now I want to jump to the phone. I want to talk to Melissa real quickly because she just called in. And Melissa, you work in food service restaurant industry. That's your bailiwick. But you have a coworker, a person that you know, that used to be an educator. How are you doing this morning, Melissa?
Yes. And yes, he was an educator, and a 15-year-old girl slapped him across the face, open-handed, and he decided to become a chef instead. He liked to cook on the side, and he switched immediately.
Yeah. And in fact, Melissa, I appreciate the phone call because that's kind of what we talked about with Spencer yesterday. He was like, no, those teachers will show up because they need the paycheck. But you're an example of, here's a teacher that was assaulted by a student and he found a different paycheck. Yeah, he went out there and we're losing teachers in part because of this, because of the behavior of your students. I've said this on our show for years. Some of your children are monsters and we are refusing to address that issue. Yeah. Hey, Melissa, thanks for the phone call. I appreciate it. Thanks.
I just go back to, we had one teacher in my elementary school that was feared.
Yeah.
Because he was like no nonsense. He was an older guy, and he would grab the kid and drag him out of the classroom by the ear.
Yep.
Take him right down to the principal's office and literally throw him in there.
Yeah.
And that sent a message.
Can't do that anymore. I know.
See, I disagree with that. You should be able to.
No, but the issue is can't, not should.
Right.
The issue is you can't. And the example, and I'm going to do it right now, I'll tell you, and we'll talk about this later too. I know someone that worked in school security, okay? It is their job to patrol hallways and exterior of school to, one, look for external threats, but also it was truancy, looking for the kids that are not going to class, picking the kids up out of the class. Now, there was one student that didn't like this individual because the individual had gotten them in trouble with the parents because he wasn't going to class. And so there was consequences. So now he didn't like this guy. This guy got him in trouble. So he would say things to try to get a rise out of this security individual. This is a black man who was in his early 60s at the time. Eventually, you know the word the kid goes to. Starts using the N-word at him. Gets in his face and calling him the N-word. This security professional grabs the kid by the arm and takes him down to the dean's office.
Right. And I think everything so far I agree with.
The kid was given a warning, told not to do it again, and the security professional was fired.
What?
Was fired. Because they grabbed the kid and took them down to the office. They were fired because of it. And the reason that was given was exactly that behavior in the school at that time. They were dismissed because of it. This is in a high school. And the kid was in his face calling him the N-word. And he's a 60-plus-year-old black man. And the only thing that he did, to his credit, was to grab the kid by the arm.
That's it.
And drag him down to the dean's office, and he lost his job. Idiot. That's the system. That's the system.
In that case, I almost feel like the security professional could sue for discrimination.
Yeah, I know. But based on the parameters and what's set up inside the schools, can't. It's done. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it's like sometimes.
If I was the administrator and that guy had slapped the kid back, I would have been like, good for you. Maybe you'll teach him a lesson. Why can't teachers teach kids lessons in life?
Well, it's because what happens is, remember, we talked about it yesterday. Once you do that and you have the teacher slap back to the kid, the parent shows up and says,
so what?
And says,
go to court.
You don't
I want to see those parents pay legal fees.
No, but it's, you don't hit my kid. You don't hit my little bottle of sunshine. It's your problem. Your teacher's too aggressive. And they'll file suits. You can find.
Go. Let's do it. Let's have a court battle.
But the problem is this. Who pays for that? Who pays to defend that? You and I do, the taxpayers, because it comes out of schools.
You got staff.
I know, but it's the school budget. I know, but it's the school budget. And here's the problem: is that when you get into that, how many of those lawsuits, as a school district, do you want to fight? And every one of those dollars comes out of another program. Comes out of student instruction, comes out of building facilities, comes out of paychecks, comes out of raises, comes out of all of that.
We don't tar and feather people enough. If we just did that, a lot of that stuff, including the parents.
Yeah. There's some problems there, yeah. There's a larger problem. I can't wait to talk to Laura Carno because, she has pulled back the curtain on a really large problem I've been screaming about for years.
This is going to be a good one. Man, we got to get to news and comment because Laura's going to be joining us here in just a second. This is a big issue. Text messages, by the way, coming in. Teacher, 24 years, Cherry Creek School District. Question number 1, how many times have you seen Percent of educators who have seen somebody try to hit somebody.
Yeah.
She says 100%. Question number 2, how many educators have been actually assaulted themselves? She says 60%. She's not far off.
Yeah.
Text us in what you think the numbers are. 720-819-5115. Now it's time for News and Comment with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, News and Comment.
Hey, good Thursday morning. It's 60 and mostly clear. A beautiful morning. Expecting a high of 86 today. This portion of the news sponsored by Pastor Camp Heating and Air Conditioning at 303-777-1234 to learn more about special savings opportunities on Lennox equipment. Our top story, President Trump says the Epstein files are a new scam created by the Democrats. They have a long history of this, of course, especially with DJT going back to 2015 and 16. So that was the reason for the 180 on Wednesday by 47 and the Truth Social post. Everyone speculating.
Will you ask Attorney General Pam Bondi to release more documents to finally put this controversy to bed?
Yeah, whatever's credible, she can release. If a document is credible, if a document's there that is credible, she can release. I think it's good. But it's just a subject. He's dead. He's gone, and all it is certain Republicans got duped by the Democrats, and
this makes complete sense to me, given the lefty communist history. Glenn Beck's theory.
How do we know what's true, what's not true? Theory 5 is they knew I was campaigning. One of my campaign promises was to release the files. Somebody went in, the same people went in, and made all of this stuff point to me as if I'm some kingpin in it. Why is it the left never wanted this released until he said, I'm not going to release it? Why is Congress, the Democrats in Congress, all of a sudden saying, you've got to release this? You've got to release this. This is impeachable if he doesn't release it. Really?
So Bondi, Patel, and Bongino working on prosecuting a grants conspiracy going back almost 10 years against 47, and they can try it outside corrupt D.C. John Solomon, just the news.
The second thing you can do is you can solve the John Durham problem. John Durham had pretty strong evidence of criminality and wrongdoing, but when he brought his prosecutions in the District of Columbia, he ended up getting acquittals because a 90% Democrat jury pool just simply won't convict anyone who is going after Donald Trump. You don't have to bring this case in Washington, D.C. Why? Because some of the overt acts of the conspiracy occurred in a state like Florida. They raided Donald Trump's home in Mar-a-Lago. You can set the grand jury in the criminal case in Florida because that's some of the most current activities that would potentially qualify as criminal activities. If that happens, you have a grand jury in Florida, a much more neutral state, more willing to look at the evidence fairly.
Senate Republicans voting to slash funding for NPR and Global Waste as a part of a $9 million rollback early this morning. The package passed, and it also includes cuts to NPR and PBS, of course, the corrupt WHO and corrupt USAID. The measure now heads to the House before hopefully landing on DJT's desk. A suspect has been arrested after a state trooper used a grappler to stop a stolen vehicle in Thornton. CSP Sergeant
this video is
Ivy,
so crazy. Did you see
great?
that?
Yes, it is crazy. Ivan Alvarado says it's become a very useful tool.
Even though it did cause a crash, it was a safer way to apprehend this vehicle without having to do what's called a tactical vehicle intervention. You know, the ones we know as where we spin the cars around.
Yeah,
So
the pit maneuver. I'll be honest, though, watching that video, it's kind of like when he hits the car, there's this moment where now the force of the car takes the police cruiser and throws it into the middle of the highway barrier,
exactly.
And so you're kind of like, well, I can only imagine being driving, going, I'm not sure that was the best decision. It stopped the chase, which is nice, but physics. When you connect two cars together, you no longer have control.
Exactly. The stolen Dodge Ram, no, you're right. It was spotted early Wednesday in the area of East 84th and Grant. The state trooper was able to use the grappler to disable the stolen vehicle, and the suspect was caught after a brief foot chase. The trooper's cruiser also crashed into the median after deploying the grappler, but officials say the trooper was not hurt, thankfully. But I agree with Jeff on that one. A man is dead following a shooting in Greeley. It happened at a multi-family residence. The victim, identified as a 37-year-old Greeley resident, died from his injuries during transport to the hospital. His identity is being withheld until next of kin are notified. A lightning strike at a New Jersey archery range has killed a 61-year-old man and injured at least 13 other people. The incident occurred in Jackson Township Wednesday night. The other victims were reportedly from a local Boy Scout troop and received burns from the strike. None of the injuries were life-threatening. And Rush University Medical Center in Chicago officially ending hormone treatment, and let's see, for new patients under 18 after DJT and the administration threatened to pull federal funding. Good news. 56 in Castle Rock, 57 in Boulder, 60 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue on Thursday. Blake Olson, News Talk 710, KNUS.
A cold front moving south along the Front Range will trigger an excellent chance of showers and thunderstorms today through tonight into tomorrow. Be advised, especially today, of the risk of severe weather with heavy rain, large hail, strong winds. High 70s and low 80s falling into the 70s, upper 50s tonight, 80s tomorrow. Weather is a service of L&L Heating and Air Conditioning. For quick, trustworthy, and dependable service, call L&L Heating and Air Conditioning at 720-851-1691. Visit them online at bestdenverhvac.com. You'll be comfortable with L&L. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. One of the people out there doing tremendous work to equip teachers, especially facing an active school shooting situation. It's Laura Carno with Faster Colorado, training teachers, administrators on what to do, how to fight back, how to protect our students. But she found herself in an interesting situation where she was appointed via Paul Lundeen, former Senate Minority Leader, to the Colorado Educator Safety Taskforce. And when we think of school violence, we often think of it in the context of those school shootings, which are terrible, awful. They've got to be addressed. But there's a lot of violence taking place in schools that we may not necessarily talk about. And her piece in the Denver Gazette, Our Educators Need Protection, gets into this. And now she joins the Jeff and Bill Show. Good morning, Laura. Thanks for joining the program.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me, guys.
So tell us what you all found out as you joined this committee about violence taking place in our schools.
Yeah, and you're right. You know, I spend my waking hours thinking about how to protect schools against school shootings, which they're all over the media when they happen, and all that kind of stuff. Everybody knows about them. And this Educator Safety Task Force kind of set that aside and was talking about violence by students against staff. And this is hitting, kicking, throwing things, beating them up, all these kind of things. And you guys, I was I was stunned that there was this much of it going on. And the reason I was stunned is because this isn't the stuff that makes the news. And despite the fact that all of these incidents are supposed to be reported, there are laws that say it needs to be reported. It's not being reported, and it's being, handled quietly at the campus, and let's not get law enforcement involved. And that's why we don't know anything about it. But as you were alluding to with this survey that we did, this poll that we did, the numbers are stunning.
Let's get into those numbers. You looked at and spoke with 1,100 educators who responded to a survey you put together from across the state and from urban and rural and suburban schools. You linked to the findings of the survey, but here's the first question you asked. Have you had a student attempt to cause physical injury to you or to another adult in your presence? And what was this response number?
74%. Stunning.
That's 3/4 of all the educators you talked to.
And I personally think it's a little short. I think it falls a little short because I would have guessed higher than 80. Yeah, based on my personal experiences and people that I know.
And so just to talk about statistically significant samples and all that kind of stuff, were people more likely to respond to the survey who had the experience? Potentially so. But even if it was half of that, was anybody aware that this much violence was happening? And in the case of this question, attempted violence. Does anybody know that much was happening? And I think for a lot of people, unless this is what I've come to find out what Bill is saying, unless you know somebody in education who has shared stories like this, you might not have known it. What I'm finding is if you know somebody in education, specifically people who left education because of some of these issues, you might not know that number.
That's Laura Carno. She's the executive director of Faster Colorado. She sits on a committee with regards to educator safety. It's a task force put together here in Colorado that's looking at violence taking place in our schools. The second question you surveyed, again, over 1,000 educators, rural, urban, across the spectrum. Have you been physically injured by a student, and what was that number?
50%. And we were stunned. So the task force members, I was one of the few not in education. And as far as like working directly in a school or being a mental health professional that works with schools or law enforcement that works with schools, I was one of the few. The stories that these individuals told, and they were probably selected for the task force because they had these issues of having violence perpetrated upon them by students, including one who was taken away by ambulance with broken ribs, that I talk a little bit about in that article. And so as we were hearing these first-person stories, and you guys, you know me that I'm a very logical thinker. I want to see numbers and facts, and I'm not a real feeler in my decision making. This is a very emotional experience being a member of this task force because, on the right side of the aisle, we might say, "Oh, teachers, it's all teachers' unions, it's all politics, it's all this and that." These are human beings who went to their workplace, were assaulted by somebody that they worked with, so to speak, the students. And in many cases, nobody came to help them. In many cases, it was swept under the rug. In many cases, they weren't given time off, even though they had just been beaten up by somebody that now they need to go teach again. And nothing happened to this person. There were, no consequences that happened. And so because there was so much of it on this task force, and we knew, okay, well, maybe people were selected because of their run-ins with this. That's why we did this survey to say, okay, what else is going on out there, and got these numbers. I actually went one step further after the task force work had concluded, because I thought, is there something special about Colorado here? Were some of our laws, a part of this, that it's easier to get away with it here than than in other states. So I contacted a researcher at DePaul University who had done some of this same type of research nationally, and in a early 2025 study that they'd released, nearly identical numbers. And so then I come to the conclusion, do we have a national crisis that nobody even talks about? And it's heartbreaking. These are individuals all across the country who are being beaten up by students seemingly without consequence to the students.
That's Laura Carno. She's with Faster Colorado. If you're watching us on X or YouTube, you can see she's got a cat with her too. It's quite lovely. I love watching that.
What's the kitty's name? What's the kitty's name?
This is Josie. She can't hear you because I have my earbuds in.
Josie.
She's an old lady. For those watching, I am coming to you from our shop. So it's not the most glamorous of Zoom backgrounds, but we are living on our construction site. So our shop is now the office, the gym, the pantry,
I love
etc. So
it is pure Eastern Colorado, where you can you can have mice or you can have cats. It's one or the other. And so y'all chose cats. Same
and
with us.
She's our mouser. Even though she's 17 years old, she still loves catching mice.
I love it. Well, I want to get back to the issue here. There's so many levels to this. Can you give us some of the personal stories you heard? You mentioned the getting kicked in the ribs or punched in the ribs, breaking a rib. What were some of the other stories? Help people understand what teachers are facing from these violent students.
And by the way, I think this one was a paraprofessional who got her ribs broken by an elementary student. So So let's not forget that in elementary school you can have some kids that are pretty big and pretty strong. School staffers are not necessarily all 6'5", very tall and very buff people. Some of them are more petite individuals. So that one was, we heard that story on our very first task force meeting. There was another one though that, as I mentioned, I'm less of a feeler, more of a thinker, but this just broke everybody's heart. And I mentioned it in the article. A teacher, this was in a more rural district up in the mountains, and she talked about this student who was attacking her, and she gets on the radio and she said, I need help, this is happening. And she said, she sort of stopped the story and she said, in this very quiet voice, she said, and nobody ever came. And there was just dead silence on this call, and all of our task force meetings were via Zoom. But just sort of looking at the faces of all of the people on the Zoom, everybody had the mouth hung open look, like nobody ever came, and you couldn't help it. You're heartbreaking for this person who is being assaulted. I don't care how old the person is assaulting you, if it's an adult or not an adult. You're being assaulted. You're calling for help, and nobody ever came. And as I say in the article, those words just hung in the air. What is going on when in a school where a staff member is being assaulted by whoever, by a student, a stranger, a bear, for God's sake? Nobody ever came. And it, some of the stuff that we talk about, Jeff and Bill, is very political and partisan and all this stuff. This is not partisan. This is, assaults are happening, and because of the geography in which they happen, a school building, the consequences to the assaulter are different, because to some extent we have a culture that says these are troubled students. We don't want to start this school to prison pipeline. And some people believe that if kids in school get in trouble with the law, that it will start this so-called school to prison pipeline, and they will be in the system forever. They will be in prison forever. But what about the rights of those staff members who are being assaulted? Shouldn't they be able to get some justice for the assault? Shouldn't there be some consequences? And the other side that folks really need to look at is there are, let's say that there's a classroom of 30 students and this one person has assaulted a staff member, a teacher. The other 29 kids in that class are also traumatized. They are also not learning. They might also be scared to go back to school. How do you balance the mental health needs of that violent individual and their need to get help? And we agree, they need to get whatever help they need to get. But what about the needs of those other kids? They should be able to learn in peace. And the staff members who, as you guys mentioned earlier, are quitting over things like this, they need to be able to know that they have a safe working environment.
That's Laura Carno. She's the executive director of Faster Colorado. She sits on a committee that was put together to address violence taking place in our schools. And we often put that in the category of school shootings, but there's actually a lot more violence taking place, these assaults. Now, Bill often brings up the role of parents. I can tell you this 100%, that as someone who coached hundreds of teams and kids and all this stuff when my kids were growing up, that oftentimes the problems with the kids are attributed to the parents. So I imagine schools are in a tough place dealing with these kids that are assaulting teachers. And I even saw a video yesterday of an assault against a school resource officer that had called in the parents because the kid was hitting teachers and other students. And then the dad attacked the school resource officer. And you're like, well, no wonder.
There was a story recently, same thing happened with a mom. It's not here in Colorado, but the same thing. Mom was called in because her daughter was in a fight at school, and the mom fought the counselor. During the conference about the discipline for her daughter, the mom got up and started punching the counselor.
So what are parents to, or what are educators to do in this situation where you likely have a systemic problem within the house?
Yeah. And potentially the parents could be unaware. They could be aware and not have the skill set necessary to control the violent behavior at school or at home. They could have their heads in the sand and say, no, not my kid. My kid is, it must have been the teacher. There wasn't one theme. Because on the task force, we had people from neighborhood schools, charter schools, as you mentioned, urban, suburban, rural. There were a lot of different approaches in different areas that we talked about because there was a lot of discussion. Is there legislative remedy needed here, or are there best practices needed here? So far we haven't come up with the law needs to change because basically the laws are there. They're just not helping. But there was a lot about parental involvement. So some of the bigger school districts that were represented have less parent contact because there was a much higher prevalence of both parents working maybe 2 jobs each, just not being as available for their kids during school hours, not during school hours, and more of a feeling that like the school was, kind of that in loco parentis in place of the parent. Where in charter schools, if you think about what it takes for a parent to get involved enough to choose a charter school, they've got to do a lot of research. They've got to go to informational nights, all that stuff. It's not a default. Does that mean that those parents also tend to have a little bit more time with their kids because maybe they had the research time because they only have 1 job each or something like that? And then an interesting trend that we heard in rural schools is among new rural students, a lot of, and this, I did some side interviews with FASTER teachers, people who've come through our FASTER program, a lot of them rural schools. I just wanted to dig in a little bit more and found an interesting rural trend that kids who are new to rural schools, meaning their families haven't been there for their whole lives, part of the reason that the families moved to rural schools is they wanted to get what they perceived as a better school or smaller class sizes or more individualized attention. And so those also tended to be a little bit more parental involvement, I think for a similar reason to why there was a little bit more parental involvement in charter school families, because they just happen to be the same people who did that extra research, as opposed to going with what their default school was.
That's Laura Carno, Executive Director of Faster Colorado. She equips teachers with training to address school shootings, administrators as well. She's on a task force called the Colorado Educator Safety Taskforce that is looking at other violence that's taking place within the schools. Now, Laura, I got to wonder, is this a newer trend? Because growing up, I was entirely publicly school educated in the Cherry Creek School District, and I couldn't imagine ever hitting a teacher. I don't think I ever saw any violence ever in elementary, middle school, or high school. So is this a newer trend, or has this always been an undercurrent?
Definitely a newer trend, and I'm older than you are, so I remember, where if anything like that were to happen, if you were to even talk back to a teacher, your parents might be there to pick you up. And I was, of course, not the talk back to the teacher type. But in the schools that I attended, there definitely were stories of, so-and-so did this to Mrs. So-and-so, and his dad came and pulled him out of class by the ear, and he's in big trouble. Totally different generation when societal violence was lower. But if you look at shorter-term trends, what we learned on the task force is that since coming back from COVID, it's gotten significantly worse. So I think looking at the shorter term trends is very interesting as well, because what happened when kids whose parents both had jobs, both might have had two jobs, and they were, in that isolation situation and didn't have adult supervision during the day, those kids potentially got worse during that time. So shorter term trends certainly are interesting. I mentioned the researcher at DePaul University that I'm in contact with, and she connected me with a education reporter at a national news organization that I'm going to, kind of ping and just say, hey, I think we have something big national. This is a big national story that I think needs more eyes on it, because I'll also talk in the article about. It's not that we don't have the laws. The laws are there. You shouldn't assault people, and if it happens on a school ground, it's supposed to be reported, and all of those kind of things. I think we have a culture issue where it is seemingly okay to say, let's not do anything public with this. Let's get the violent kid, the help they need, and not talk about it anymore. There seems to be a cultural issue that it's okay to do that. And I make the point in my article, that is not okay. People going to a workplace, being assaulted physically, that is not okay, whether it's at, KNUS studios or a school or wherever. Violence is not okay. And we can't have this, sort of two-tiered justice system that if you beat somebody up down the street, you can get in trouble criminally for that, but if you beat somebody up on school grounds, you get a free pass. That's just not okay culturally.
That's Laura Carno with Faster Colorado talking about violence that's taking place in our schools. We got a text message here from an educator who wrote, could you talk about maybe students on IEPs? Bill, remind me what IEP stands for.
Basically, those are kids that need extra support services. It would be special
services.
ed. So, it's an individual educational profile. It's basically our plan. Individual educational plan is what it is. But if you need extra support services, and IEP kids many times can be extra disciplinary issues, and I appreciate what Laura Carno was talking about, and especially bringing in the paraprofessionals, because if you would separate the two communities inside of a school and talk about teacher assaults and paraprofessional assaults, you will be shocked at the larger increase of assaults on the paraprofessionals. You will be absolutely shocked with the amount of individual violence they deal with on a daily basis. And in some of the instances that I'm aware of with kids on IEPs and what's gone in schools, I know a kid that was on an IEP, and this is from an educator that I'm familiar with that I know, that was on an IEP, and this is in 5th grade at the time. This person's a 5th grade teacher. He has some behavioral issues. He has an outburst during class. Okay, this is in regular classroom time. The instruction was to take all of the students out of the class until he calms down. So the learning stopped for everybody else in that classroom while the child flipped desks, threw chairs around, took things out of other people's desks, threw it all over the place, tore up things off the wall, made the entire classroom a mess. When they calmed down, the para was able to get them out of the classroom, and then the classroom had to be put back together, and then finally the education can return. That's hours of lost educational opportunity for each and every one of those kids based on how they dealt with one kid. I know another instance in an elementary school where the child was basically put into a room and he was allowed to destroy whatever is in that room until he could calm down. And that included a paraprofessional having to go into that school. And this is an elementary school kid who I believe is in 3rd grade at the time. The paraprofessional has to go into that room, help the kid after he's calmed down, and then help the kid put his clothes back on because he stripped himself naked, and then clean the feces off the wall and the floor that he smeared all over the place.
Jeez,
that's what the para's responsible for.
Why don't we bring back nuns as teachers?
Yeah, that's what they're responsible for.
My mom grew up with nuns as teachers, and she was terrified of them.
Yeah, I know paraprofessionals have been assaulted. I know, and when Laura was talking about students that are too big, yeah, I have a member of my immediate family that talks about dealing with kids inside of her school that are bigger, larger, and stronger than she is. I have someone that I know directly that was involved in having a student assault them and had the exact same experience that Laura talked about. On the phone, on the radio, I need help, I need help, I need help. No one came. When my daughter's a paraprofessional, she was witnessing a full-blown fist fight on the playground between two kids. They are pounding the snot out of each other. They have 3 paraprofessionals that cannot pull them apart. They're calling for school security on the radio. Never arrived.
Laura, we've only got about 2 minutes left. We've pushed way past our commercial breaks because this is such a riveting conversation. Where do we go from here?
Yeah.
And how can people connect with Faster Colorado?
Yeah, and let me just really quick address the IEP issue. There are kids that need special help. How can we get them the help they need in a dedicated environment so that what Bill was talking about doesn't happen to all of the other kids? That's where I would see the solution. My article is all over my social media. I would ask people to read it, to share it, see what's going on at your kid's school. We need a cultural change, and that starts with parents saying it's not okay for my kid's teacher, my kid's para to be beaten up. And Faster Colorado, where we train armed school security teams, folks can go to fastercolorado.org. Again, very separate situation from what we're talking about. Fastercolorado.org and see what we're doing. We're in over 41 school districts in Colorado. We've seen over 400 people going into this school training year who are armed today on campus to protect our children against the worst possible thing that could happen, a school shooter.
Well, this has kicked off a really important conversation.
Yes, it has.
And as Laura pointed out, I think this is a national issue.
Oh, yeah, it is. And
the text messages, pouring in from teachers, educators, parents dealing with this stuff. This is a big issue that I don't think is being properly addressed. Laura Carno doing a wonderful job in the Gazette. Our educators need protection. Go check out the article.
Yeah,
connect with Laura Carno. Let's address this.
Yeah.
Let's address this. And I've posted on X, teachers should be allowed to hit the student back. They get hit first. That's generated a lot of controversy. And I think maybe even bringing in a lot of nuns.
Yeah,
nuns would probably.
The thing is, as Laura outlined, the very first thing that happens is those parents walk in there, they threaten to file a lawsuit, and they say it's the teacher's fault, it's the school's fault, you've created this. My little bundle of sunshine and kittens isn't that violent. It's your fault. That's what happens every time.
Let's create a legal defense fund for teachers. All right. Laura,
thank you so much.
You were great. Thank you so very much.
Thanks so much. Appreciate you.
Yeah, and thanks for showing the kitty to us, too. Appreciate that. It's adorable. All right. We'll talk to you later.
We'll continue. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Powerful piece in the Denver Gazette, Our Educators Need Protection. It comes from Laura Carno, who's well known in conservative circles about protecting students and faculty and staff during a school shooting. She trains administrators and school teachers on how to deal with that, but she was put on a task force called the Colorado Educator Safety Taskforce. And this woman, Laura Carno, who, as she said, is not a real feeler. She's a rational thinker, first and foremost, and stunned. I mean, left her stunned with the amount of assaults taking place in schools, and some that aren't reported, in part because of this fear of the kind of, well, we're going to end up with the school to prison pipeline, that type of thing. It needs to be addressed.
And also, you don't want to draw attention to it, because if you have these series of assaults at your local school, that's reported in news, that's on searches, right. And then when parents are looking, oh, wait, this is a school district that has X, Y, or Z.
Let's go to the phone lines. Ron, Colorado Springs. Good morning, Ron. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Yeah, morning, Ron.
Hey. Hi. Good morning, guys. Everything I hear is so right on. I was a security guard starting in 2010 for about 6 years at a pretty high-end school in Colorado Springs district, a lot of affluent kids. I had a kid in my first year who was acting out, trying to start a fight in the courtyard at lunch. Kid was only about 5 foot tall, but he was walking around swinging on different kids, trying to antagonize them, provoke them. I approached him. He wouldn't go inside. I told him to go inside to the office, and he started shouting at me, so I didn't have anybody else to help me, so tactically I turned around like I was walking away. But when he turned away also, I put him in a bear hug, picked him up, and took him inside a room and closed the door. And then by then the principal showed up. The principal tried to get me fired. I thought I handled it very well. She was outraged, and but the only thing that saved me was my boss was a retired police officer, and he went to bat for me. And that worked out okay. The second incident was two underclassmen, juniors, were leaving the campus at lunch, and you're not allowed to, two girls. And we approached them and asked them to turn the car around, go back inside. There was two officers at that time, and treated them very nicely, told them to turn around. They were furious. They reported as soon as lunch was over that we had tried to grab them, pull them out of the car. We were screaming and yelling at them. Fortunately, the only thing that saved us was a security guard on the cameras that day. Zoomed up, he caught it all on camera. We never even got within 5-6 feet of the girls. And I think the assistant principal really enjoyed calling in the parents, got the girls to make a statement in the room of what we did to them, and then he told the parents, watch this video. And the parents' eyes opened up and told the kids to apologize to us, and they left.
Nice. Now, I know that problem that you have with the idea of the principal wanting to get you fired in the first incident, and I appreciate the fact that your supervisor went to bat for you, because in some cases, the supervisor won't, because it's easier to replace you than to deal with a sideways relationship with the chief executive of the school. That many times that supervisor will take the path of least resistance, knowing that principal can make my life hell, and I better do what they want. And if it means I need to just replace this guy, I'll just replace this guy. It's hat off to your supervisor. That's unusual.
And you are right. That's rare. Most of the time, they want to protect their jobs too, so they'll just let the security guard go. Thank you, guys.
Hey, thanks, Ron. Appreciate it, man.
Ron, always
That's amazing.
I mean, the amount of text messages on this one.
Yeah, it's incredible.
The phone calls, the conversations. I think Laura has hit on something that is a national scandal, which is this growing assaults taking place by students against teachers.
I've been streaming from the minarets about this for years.
I went through my school and I never saw once, and I couldn't imagine. Ever hitting a teacher, but I guess it's becoming a problem. I don't know.
Oh, yeah,
maybe we should put the 10 Commandments up in our schools.
Thing is that I just
we were getting along so well until I said that.
The issue for me is just what we don't understand is that some of your kids are monsters, and we're not willing to deal with that and understand that.
All right, we'll continue. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.